Technology Policy Research. And as we begin each session now here at the center, I want to begin by acknowledging that the University of Colorado Boulder sits upon the land within the territories of the Ute, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho peoples. Further, I acknowledge that 48 contemporary tribal nations are historically tied to the lands that make up this state of Colorado. So today is a great day. Today we have a wonderful opportunity to have a productive conversation with Colorado State Senator Ray Scott. And in terms of a bio, I'll just read out that he serves as senator for the Mesa County, Senate District number 7, for those keeping track of the numbers, and previously served as state representative of the House Districts 54 and 55. Colorado Senator Ray Scott is a business owner and now a consultant for both energy producers and civil construction contractors. He has decades of experience in public policy and business operations. He was born in Youngstown, Ohio, but he actually left at an early age and moved to no other than Boulder, Colorado, and lived down on Table Mesa and Gillespie, as we understand. So then he moved out to Grand Junction, where he studied business at Mesa State College. He has written legislation that helped advance better practices in construction projects and funding. With his background in energy production, he also partly authored impactful bills to advance alternative fuel usage for cars and fleet vehicles, while also fighting against legislation that impairs Colorado's ability to advance oil and gas production. Finally, Colorado State Senator Ray Scott is well known at the Capitol for his outspoken positions on legislation that interferes with personal rights and freedoms that we all enjoy. So as we get started here, I think it is worth me just reminding you all that we often deal with contentious topics here in the center. I think that's part of our core function here at a university, is a free exchange of ideas. Yet part of the conditions placed on that is that all discussions must be civil, respectful, and open. So I emphasize that going forward. And I can invoke the Colorado Creed before we get started, actually, with a set of questions. And that is to act with honor, integrity, and accountability in interactions with students, faculty, staff, and neighbors. To respect the rights of others and accept our differences, to contribute to the greater good of this community, and to strive to uphold these principles as the all aspects of the collegiate experience and beyond. So, in other words, this is a good chance for us to have a respectful and very productive exchange. So the way that we're going to do this is that I have some moderated questions to begin. Give the senator a chance to then expound from there, or however he sees fit. And if we get through maybe some of these questions, depending on where we go, then we have an online community that's with us today, and we obviously have all of you. So we'll open it up for questions from you all as well. So thank you very much for coming along.
You're very welcome.
So to begin, one of the reasons that we wanted to organize these conversations, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say it now, that this is in collaboration with and partnership with the Benson Center. Ben Hale is the interim director. Can you say the full name so that I don't get it wrong?
The Benson Center for the Study of Western Civilization.
For the Study of Western Civilization. So one of the reasons that the Benson Center and our center wanted to organize these conversations with politicians from both parties is that political polarization has become a huge strain on politics and civil society in America, as we know. We see this manifest in a variety of ways, and we know that we need to have more opportunities for people with diverse views to talk with one another. What we at universities can and should be doing is to help to reduce that polarization. And we should and can invite in different perspectives from people such as elected officials. And so with that in mind, that becomes my first two-part question, I suppose. What can we do better to help reduce that polarization as a community? And how do you approach polarization in your own work?
Well, first of all, let me thank Max and the staff for inviting me here. This is a unique opportunity. Albeit, I think Max misrepresented that this was a fundraiser for me.
If you wouldn't mind.
So, I don't know what went wrong here, but I was expecting donations.
I see a hat on a presentation. Hat.
Yeah, so I mean that's how you get a politician to show up, right? Anyway, no, thank you for having me here. It's been an interesting ride getting here, as we know, and we'll talk a little bit about that. To your question, I think this is a very good tool to start defusing the hysteria. A lot of it, I think, is driven by the national political scene. I mean, everybody gets up in the morning, well, I hope everybody doesn't do it anymore, but it seems like everybody gets up in the morning and either watches CNN or Fox News, goes to work in a very bad mood because they've drawn an opinion about Speaker Pelosi or the president, or, you know what I mean? And you go to work and you probably argue with your colleagues and everybody wants to beat each other to death by noon. That's not where we should be, I think, as a society. I think we need to let's just tone this down. I can't remember the country. I want to say Sweden. They did a poll one time several years ago asking people who their president was. And something like 0.05% knew. And that's the way I think politics should be. I really think it should be. People just don't need to wake up every morning thinking about, what did the president do? You know, what did he tweet? What did Governor Polis do? What, you know, I mean, that's a terrible way to live your life. And being in this circle, doing what I do, trust me, I actually try not to do that. Number one, I don't care about certain things they do. And number two, I make a living too. I work. I do things outside the legislature because theoretically, by our Constitution, we're only in power for 120 days. That's it. We are truly citizen legislators. So at the end of May, or mid-May, we go home. And we go back to work in the community with whatever our career field is. That's what we do. And it's kind of a neat system. And I think the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Congress was supposed to do that. They don't, of course. But I think would be better off if they did, quite frankly. Because then you actually get to talk to the people you represent, right? You're with them, you're working with them, you're going to breakfasts and lunches. But those are the kind of things I think that help diffuse historical level discussions. Be remiss if I did not say something about the media. I think the media is having a blast. I mean, this is giving them something to talk about every single day. Every day. And it's not just about the story. It seems like the media has stopped telling the story and editorializing their beliefs in the story. You know, let me make up my own mind. Just give me the facts. I'll make up my own mind. Tell me where to research it. I'll go make up my mind. I don't need a reporter telling me or twisting or changing a word just enough to make me think there's a problem. Did I cover everything pretty well?
Yeah, that's a good start.
Okay.
That's a good
I'll just
start.
stop there because I know we're limited. So.
Yeah, and we've got plenty of questions here,
Okay.
and then we definitely want to open it up to the group as well. So, second question. The title of our session, this kind of session where we're going to have in next week, Colorado State Senator Steve Fenberg, and then the following month, Colorado State Senator Kerry Donovan.
Boring. I'll just say it right now, boring.
We're focused on policies in climate and environment. So just a basic question, can you discuss the work that you're doing in your role as a Colorado Senator representing Grand Junction and Mesa County as it relates to climate and the environment?
Okay. What we do is we all have a district. So I have Senate District 7, which encompasses Mesa County. So those are my constituents. That's the people that I represent. Even though I still represent more people in the state of Colorado, that's the group that I think about the most. Those are the issues that I bring to the Capitol, and so do the other members of the General Assembly. They're working for their constituents in their district. So a lot of what I bring to the Capitol are what they believe, what their wants and needs are. That's how the system is set up. Now, as far as, and this, I might as well just start talking.
Please.
Are you going to tell me to shut up at some point?
No.
Okay. I mean, this is your fun.
Well, maybe at some point. You can do that at one.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think I want to back up just a little bit. I talked about the press just a little bit. I got to say, this is the first time ever. I do a lot of talks around the state, but this is the first time ever I've been preempted with an article about something I did or said. And I didn't know that. I was camping over the weekend. Yeah, Republicans actually go in nature. It's weird. But we do shoot things when we're there. So I'm up there doing my camping thing. And I'm on my way back, and my cell phone, of course, isn't working, but I got the little ding on about Montrose, I think it was, an email from the Denver Post. a young lady asked me to comment because some professors, I don't know, some scientist had messaged her and said, hey, this bad guy's coming, and he said stupid things at the Capitol, and do you have a comment? Well, that was Sunday afternoon, so I just sent her back a message when I could, said, hey, I'll give you a call tomorrow. I'm driving to them. Well, the story came out yesterday morning, and I'm like, my phone's ringing at 7:30, and I'm like, who the hell's calling me? What's going on? I don't answer. A few text messages, emails are pinging, and then I finally started catching back up on that. They did what? So I picked up the article, read it, and of course, I usually laugh, and I did again. I laughed at what they did. Because I know what I said. I had to actually get refreshed on what I said, but I had a pretty good idea what I said. So I thought about that, and I thought, that's the problem that we're dealing with. To your first question, we have individuals, that's okay, that want to help incite the hysteria, right? So let's get people fired up about this guy coming because he must be nuts. He said this in the Senate law. He's a climate denier. So, I'm surprised we don't have protesters. We managed to get the news. So anywhere I go, by the way, you guys can come with me, we'll be on camera. So you can always be on camera. But the interesting part is, I'm going to kind of take you through the legislative well, as they call it. What we do there is nuts. Just put it out there. Totally nuts. They call it the sausage grinder. So we are not in power right now. The Democrats have taken over everything. Everything. Which some of you in this room are probably like, yes. Other people might be going, is this a good idea? I think we're in a great place with a divided legislature. My colleagues even said I'm nuts when I say that. But think of a very crappy soccer game. You sat there for 4 hours and it ends in a 0-0 tie, which I don't get that with soccer.
It's 90 minutes, actually.
Whatever that is. I'd rather go to full contact. I'd rather go to full contact soccer. Somebody's got to win, right? But in the legislature, when we have a split legislature, we can end up with a 0-0 tie. Do no harm. We can't do anything because if we come up with something stupid, they kill it. If they come up with something stupid, we kill it. So we'd all leave the building after 120 days and go, well, okay, see you next year. And we could keep things in balance. We've lost that balance. The balance is gone. So what happens in the well, as was discussed in this article, and that I'll be glad to discuss more, is we have debate. So, and there's all kinds of reasons for the debate. So we just want to put things on record so that our constituents know what we're saying. We want to throw a grenade, as we call it, to kind of stir something up on the other side. And they do the same thing. So we're kind of back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes, believe it or not, we're just trying to kill time. Time is our, that's the only thing we got. We have a voice, we don't have votes. So if we can use our voice and run the clock out in that bad soccer game, it's over. And just to that point, we killed about 120-ish bills, died on the calendar. Because we just drug them out. So we'll get down there and we'll talk. And if you watch the U.S. Senate, if you're bored enough to watch C-SPAN, you can see sometimes where there's somebody talking and nobody's around. Similar, very similar, because nobody's paying attention to what you're saying, right? So sometimes you can say something inflammatory just to see if you can get somebody to lift their head up from their desk or wake them up, depending on what they're doing. So my discussion was talking about climate change, because I can't remember exactly which bill it was. It was something about measuring greenhouse gases, I think it was, which was about number 10, I believe, of bills coming through on pretty much the same subject. My argument was, how many do we need? Well, the media enjoyed this was the fact when I said something about, I would argue that climate change is actually reversed, but they kind of left out the next part, which was over the last 80 or 100 years. What I was really talking about was like emissions and our quality of life and what's really changed. I don't think anybody in this room could say, we want to go back to the industrial age and live in that climate, right? Those emissions and all the things that were going on then, it was horrific. It was, you can go back and look at the pictures. It was just terrible. But we've had such massive improvements in our environment. Yes, we have, and I did say this in my comments. Yes, we have further to go. They didn't put that in there, of course, because that would calm you back down where you go, okay, he's being reasonable now. So, media-driven hysteria is very damaging to the process. Are they gonna let up off that throttle? I don't think so. I think it's gonna probably get jammed up even further. I won't be surprised if some of my comments today will be twisted and turned into a new story that talks about how crazy I am. Just to incite people to think, man, this is what we've got in the state legislature. But what we really have is some very smart people with a lot of common sense. And we do work across the aisle. That's what's fascinating to me. What you see in the media is this huge clashing, smashing of heads. But they don't talk about the fact I used to go down to John Hickenlooper's office and have a whiskey with him and shoot the breeze about different topics. And he would tell me why he can't help me pass something for highway funding, for example. And then I would argue with him that, John, we need better roads. I know we need better roads, but I can't do this because we need 100 million here and 200 million over here. And we would have these discussions. And believe it or not, sometimes I won. And he would say, you know what, you're right. We're going to fix that. Now, separation of powers. It's supposed to be that, right? We all know that. Don't kid yourself. There's not as much separation as you might think, okay? Because when the governor speaks, somebody in that body is listening. Last year was a perfect example of that. Everything you saw pass was his agenda. It was his agenda, bottom line. He said he wanted 181, we're going to talk about that a little bit. He wanted that passed. Family leave, he tried to get it passed, but we didn't block that one. There's a lot of business groups that came out against that. But I could go on and on about the different bills. But the point being is we've got to drop that hysteria level. I tell people all the time, and I've seen this especially with the younger folks, they don't really read newspapers. You guys pick up, you get into that? Probably not so much. You kind of do it off of this little thing called an iPhone or something. You kind of. The problem is the headlines. People tend to look at the headline and they don't read the story. Ray Scott runs over 5 CU students. Oh my God. He's an animal. He should be in debt. We'll shoot him. We'll get rid of him. But then they don't go on to say, but they rode their bicycles in front of him. Asked him to run, whatever story like because that's what people do. They tend to scan the headlines. I tell people all the time, go ahead and look at the headlines, but when you see something of interest, stop, for God's sake, and read the story. And I think that's important. Anyway.
Great. We'll get to 181 here in a little bit. I will just throw in, since soccer has already come up, that running out the clock, that there is a term, it's probably not appropriate in British parlance. It's called shithousery.
I gotta remember that.
You can take that back to the
Yeah.
So one question I want to ask you is about basically putting the price on carbon emissions through a tax or a cap. Many constituents, including Republicans, in fact, there was a Frank Luntz run poll that found the Republicans under 40 years old support a carbon tax 7-1. At the federal level, there's currently a bipartisan carbon pricing bill, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which would charge a fee on carbon emissions and distribute the revenues evenly to citizens as a dividend. What role do you see as carbon pricing playing in climate policy generally, and then maybe more specifically at the federal and then even at the state level?
Well, we had concerns this last year that there was a bill passed. And I'll throw some numbers out there because sometimes I can't remember 600 bills. But I believe it was $45 a ton in that range. We fought hard against that because I believe the federal number was something like 22-ish in that range. But nobody had really said it's settled. This is a good number to work with. But again, the bill passed. So Colorado was locked in to, I believe, about $45 a ton. But nobody could really back that number up. We argued that the feds had come out and industry experts had come out and said it should be decided based on more local circumstances. But we couldn't get that stopped. So now we pretty much have a number set here. Now how do they plan on implementing that? I have no idea. That'll probably be this year. I don't like it that much. I mean, I don't think it's a great idea. I think it's got way too much room for wiggle and creating some issues. We always say, unforeseen consequences. We just don't know what it looks like. I think we need more information before we can make a good policy decision.
So it's not to say you oppose a cap or a tax, but just that more work needs to be done to better understand.
Yeah, I'm not 1,000% against it. At this point, I'd like to make sure that we're going to be going down that rabbit hole. We got a lot of work to do to get there.
I mentioned Republicans under 40. I want to pivot to.
I thought you said under 4. I
I
have to revise my comments.
So just getting to some more polling. That recent polls have found that over half of Republican voters, 2/3 of young Republican voters are worried about the environment. There is seen to be this shift that's taking place generationally within the Republican Party. And I just wondered, what ways do you feel that the GOP can and should adapt to serve those constituents?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't mind saying that the GOP in general allowed the Democrats to control the narrative on greenhouse gases, global warming, ozone, multiple things that they've grabbed onto. We've let them take that narrative. I think the GOP is somewhat polarized right now, trying to figure out, we can't just say, well, you're a tree hugger, so therefore we don't agree with you. We have to come up with a better narrative for that. In looking around, I mean, again, how many scientists do we have? Oh, hell, I can handle this. Just kidding. You start getting into this data thing, right? The data points. A lot of it's the education process. Give you a quick example. If I call a local school in my area, even though we're a very bright Republican area, and I said, hey, I'm with Noble Oil and Gas. I want to come in and talk to some students about the use of fossil fuel and how great it is. How far do you think I'm going to get? I'm not going to go right. But if I say I'm going to come in and talk to your kids about global warming and climate change, because that's the big national narrative right now, I would be welcomed with open arms. So by winning the narrative, what they're doing is they're shifting to the school children. We just saw what was that crazy protest? Why the hell didn't we get protests when I was a kid? They get more days off of school to protest than they get to do anything else. I think it's great. If I was them, I don't think it's so much as a taxpayer. But they've gotten to that's, if you want to call it STEM type education, and we haven't. I think there's got to be some balance there, because I've talked to I have a grandson. I realize I only look like I'm 20, but I do have a grandson. And he's now 7th grade. And we've had a couple chances to chat, and I've asked him, what have you been told in school? Mm-hmm. And it's 100% global warming. I said, what do you know? When I said fossil fuels, he said, well, those are dinosaurs. So I said, well, you're not being taught about anything besides green energy? And he was just like, no, not really. They don't talk about that. That can probably create issues with polling, right? I mean, as time goes on, if that's all they know, if that's all they hear, what else is there to discuss?
That's an interesting perspective. So let's track back to Senate Bill 181, because that was kind of the centerpiece of a lot of legislation you referred to that went through in the last legislative session. So basically that required Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, or COGCC, to restrict the production of oil and gas in Colorado, quote, if necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare of the environment and wildlife resources. So my question to you basically is, what was your stance on that? How do you feel about how the process went, and what do you see as some of the positive as well as negative implications from SB 120?
Okay. I'm going to do one thing before we get to that, because I want people just to know this, and then we'll do 181. I want to give you a quick example of things that a big bad Republican did, and people are shocked usually when they hear this, because we understood there was a climate issue. My gosh, back in the 80s. I passed Senate Bill 070 back in 2013, along with Democrats. I had a hell of a time getting this bill passed, but what it basically did was forcing forcing, that's the key word, the state fleet of vehicles to go to an alternate fuel. Forcing. Now this is under Hickenlooper, of course, but they're still not doing it. They've had some success, but they haven't done much. They haven't done much. We wanted the pickup trucks out there on CNG or LP gas, because I think the scientists in the room would know that the emissions on CNG and propane are massively less than gasoline or diesel. We wanted them to go with whatever they wanted to do. If they wanted to use EVs or they wanted to use hybrids, they could. But your own state, who is touting all these wonderful things, hasn't moved the ball. That's something to keep in the back of your mind. But we had to, I mean, can you imagine this? We've got everybody in the state capitol screaming and hollering and stomping up and down about, we have to go, we have to be, you know, we have our own Green New Deal, right? We have to get this fixed. We had to pass a piece of legislation in 2013 to even get them to think about that. So that kind of gives you the, you know, is it politics or is it really policy? I mean, what are they thinking about? Again, in 2014, we passed another bill, House Bill 1326. Again, I had no Republican support on my side. What that bill did was allow fleets of vehicles to be converted to, again, alternate fuels. When we say alternate fuels, we don't care. It could be hydrogen, water, whatever, beer, whatever it can burn. That's an alternate fuel, right? We did that because UPS, if you notice, UPS is now on CNG and propane. FedEx, Amazon, switching some of theirs over. Bluebird buses. You ever get behind a school bus and you see a little black diamond that says CNG or LPG? They're running an alternate fuel. City buses. None of those fleets were switching over to an alternate fuel. What the studies showed, the fleets of vehicles are the problem. City government, county government, state government, FedEx, UPS, the list goes on and on. All the little go-karts out at the airport are on CNG, the little baggage outfits and stuff. So we were pushing that further by letting fleets be involved. Waste management, the big garbage truck companies, the green trucks running around. If you look close, you don't see it, but there's a little thing on there that says CNG. They're running CNG on those trucks. So we understand the problem. It's then you get into the fight over the policy of, well, by God, it's got to be electric. Well, they don't have an electric garbage truck. I don't know when they're going to have one. Might be 20 years, I don't know. Pickup trucks, F-150s, F-250s. We knew that it's going to be eons before they get that accomplished. I understand Ford's getting close. But what's that going to cost the city? I don't know. Beats that out of me. But I wanted to get those two things out of the way so you just understood. Now I'm going to go one little quick step further. Back in the 80s, when I worked for a company called Williams Energy, we actually came to the State House. And I kind of forgot about this till last night. We actually passed a bill. I don't remember exactly what we were able to accomplish. But we actually had conversion centers. Williams was based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, a big natural gas company and propane company. We built conversion centers all over the state of Colorado, as a matter of fact, all over the United States, to convert vehicles, fleet vehicles, police vehicles, taxi cabs, all the vehicles you can imagine, from gasoline and diesel fuel to either CNG or propane. We were wildly successful. We could not get enough storage tanks. We couldn't. There was only 2 manufacturers in the United States. They couldn't get us enough tanks to put on the vehicles to run the fuel. Price of propane was about 40 cents a gallon back then. Gasoline was about $1.30. Big incentive, right, to do something. Plus we had some tax credits for them. So we had vehicles lined up to get these conversions completed. And I'm actually heading somewhere with this. I can't remember the exact time, but the propane prices and the gasoline prices shifted. And when they got basically even, those centers started closing. And the reason I'm saying that is it's always about the money. Always about the money. The city of Snowmass, I remember having a conversation with them. I was like, but you're saving Aspen. And it's too, we're good now. Now the price differential is gone. So my point is, never let these government people fool you. It's always about the money. So if somebody doesn't see an economic benefit to doing something, they're not going to do it. And I think that's going to carry over to the general public as well. The adoption of EVs. I don't have a problem with an EV. I've driven the hell out of Teslas. I think they're a hoot. I thought Cadillacs was better, but they quit making it for a while. But they're a blast to drive. They make a hell of a lot of sense right here. I mean, I'd drive one all the time if I had the money to do it. But I can't do it right. I could probably get away with it, but if you don't want to get in your car in the morning and go, how far can I go? Especially if you're going to Denver, going to Durango, going somewhere, if I'm going to Utah. I don't want to have to sit there and calculate all this crap, right? And I think that's where their downfall is so far as they don't have enough of those stations available. That'll probably change. New technology is moving quick. We'll see. But that is the inherent problem we're facing in Colorado. Is we've had a governor now that just came out and mandated that you've got to do it. I don't give a damn where you live. You can live in Crested Butte, Colorado. You don't have an extension cord long enough, my friend, but sorry, you're going to have to do it. That isn't the way you do public policy. The problem is right here, right where we sit. The Department of Health will tell you that 70% of the emission problems in Colorado, number one, are what we call a non-attainment area. I suppose it's probably Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. And it's 70% of our emissions. So my argument in the well the other day, when I got the little story about me, it was 70% of the problem is right freaking here. It's not where I live. It's not in Alamosa. It's not in Trinidad. Leave those people alone. If you want to fix the problem, point your damn arrow at the target and shoot. And see if you can fix it right here where the problem is. And that's where government can screw things up or make it better.
So back
Do I get
to,
donations now? No.
so back to 181 though specifically.
181.
COGCC and that reframe.
Oh yeah. 181 was driven by this conversation. Okay, let's be blunt about that. Jared Polis is from here. All of his staff, pretty much, are from here, Boulder. They're driving the narrative. 181 came and was born right where we're sitting. There was no way it was not going to pass. It was just going to pass. My arguments against 181, I was the point of the spear for the Republican Party and for the natural gas and the oil gas. We had about a dozen amendments that we were trying to tweak and change and move things around a little bit and kind of get some relief for certain operators. Because the plan with 181, don't kid yourself, is to shut it down. It's just to shut it down. End of discussion. It's not working very well. Even the governor now, I think, is doing a little bit of a moonwalk. Why is he doing that? I have statistics.
Get a picture of the moonwalk.
I actually tried it once and fell right on my brain. Some of the interesting statistics about what happens with fossil fuel in Colorado. But let me take coal out of that because coal's not part of the numbers that I have. And maybe you guys know this. If you've heard all this before, just tell me. Right now, $31.4 billion of our economic well-being in the state of Colorado is driven by oil and gas production. Just a fact. Over 230,000 people in the state are employed some way or another with the oil and gas industry. Those are massive numbers. Those are you can't look the other way and act like they're not there. Sad story. 200 people got laid off in Grand Junction, Colorado yesterday as a direct effect of 181. 200. Now, in the size of Grand Junction, I'm not a mathematician, but if you took 200 people over here, you wouldn't even notice. Over there, with a population of 100,000 people, that's probably equivalent of 2,500. I don't know what the number would work out to be when you start adding in all the variables for what they can't spend anymore. That's a big deal. That's a serious problem. 1/3 of the workforce for the oil and gas industry has been laid off, Front Range, Western Slope, all over the state of Colorado. 1/3 of that workforce. So 1/3 of 232,000 is gone. That affected a lot of people's lives. I've also told people, because most people will say, well, let's wait and see what happens, But I keep telling them, brace for impact. I've got lists here and I can email this, and you guys can disseminate it however you want to, of where severance tax money goes. Now, I didn't mean to pick on Boulder, but I did. This is money that comes to Boulder. okay? This goes to projects all over the city to support citizens. It was the tune of about $14 million in 4 years. You got to backfill that. And you have a county commissioner who I served with, Matt Jones. I asked him in a hearing one time, I said, how do you backfill that $31 billion? If in fact by 2050, 2040, you want all this fossil fuel production gone, and we're all going to be happy with renewables, where does the $31 billion come from? We have no tax. We don't have a severance tax on wind. We don't have one on solar. Maybe we should. Maybe we're going to have to backfill it, put $31 billion on the back of that. How long will they last? You got to ask yourself those questions. So we got $31 billion to fix. We got $450 billion a year to go to schools, K-12. Higher ed gets I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's a big number for CU and other universities. How are you going to backfill? Matt's response to me was, I'm going to tax the hell out of it. Okay, well, maybe some people who make $200,000 or $300,000 a year don't care. Okay, fine, you charge us more taxes. But what does that do to that lower section of people out there? I don't know if you know this or not, but 44 counties in the state of Colorado are rated as depressed. Did you know that? Out of 64. We found that out through the Jumpstart program, which I passed with Senator Johnston a few years ago. It's kind of like the New York program where you move a new business in that build something nobody else builds, you get tax credits and you can have a great time. My county has done really well with that program. We've gotten a lot of new jobs, we're doing some good things. But the counties had to apply for that program through the state. And there was all kinds of criteria, with school lunch programs and things. What happened was the data came out the other end and we had 44 counties considered depressed in Colorado. You guys don't know this, but you're carrying, you got the monkey load right on your back. You're carrying everything for the state of Colorado. If Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins have an economic hiccup, we are in deep, deep trouble. The state only keeps a couple months in reserve. We don't keep much money in reserve. We're not ready for a recession. We're not ready. Even though we've gone from a $17 billion a year budget when I went in office to $32 billion a year. Not that many people moved in. Sorry. Just did. It's been in the paper recently, we're overspending. And we massively overspent last year. All-day kindergarten, everybody support that? Right? I voted for it. I figured, hell, if my constituents are paying $300 a month, I'll help them out. But I also knew it was 1 year funding. That was it. That's all they had, was 1 year funding. And we do not have the money today to backfill that for next year. That program could be wiped out January of 2021. Be gone. We don't have the money. Anyhow, sorry, I got carried away, but I have data for you if you'd like it.
Great. And we have mechanisms through which we can make sure we get it out to everyone who's interested. So I think in the interest of time, I just want to ask you one follow-up on Senate Bill 181. And then Amy, you say we've got some online questions, and then we want to hear from all of you as well, or as many as we can after 1 o'clock. I hear what you're saying about you feel as though the effect of Senate Bill 181 is to shut it down.
Absolutely.
Which is oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
But with your business acumen, do you consider, to quote again, protecting public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources to actually be a mechanism of internalizing what are externalities of the negative impacts of oil and gas? Or do you see that as more nefarious and externality, internality?
Yeah. That's an old saying, death by 10,000 paper cuts. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening with the oil and gas industry. The interesting part of what's been happening is they have adapted to everything the state government has thrown at them. And this has been going on for 10 years, not just this last year. 181 was kind of the cherry on top of everything. But they've been fighting with emission issues, dust issues, you name it, they have dealt with it. We do have these toughest regulations in the United States for oil and gas. End of discussion. That is a true statement. I went out here to what's called the Livingston site, right here in Broomfield, just to see how terrible it was. It's stunning how much they have done to mitigate everything. You can't hear it, you can't see it. You won't even know it was there when they're done. There'll be no footprint whatsoever. And even those guys, as good as they are, they're getting ready to do a helicopter flyover, I think today or tomorrow, because they got a new type infrared sensor they want to try that picks up, like, think of a human hair in a leak in a weld or in a flange. Because they realize that they haven't been told they have to do this, by the way. This is interesting. They don't have to do it, but they know it's coming. So they try to stay ahead of that curve. So they're going to do that and make sure that when the next person that flies over can't see anything. I was shocked. Broomfield has set up air monitoring equipment right at the rig. The report came out yesterday. You guys can probably get online and take a look at it. 0 emissions. Nothing. Nothing harmful. Nothing. But here we are, right? I mean, they know what battle they're up against, and they keep fighting through it. It's, I thought about this last night. It's kind of like a nuclear power plant, right? The footprint of the power plant scares the hell out of everybody. When you see those big towers on that 50-acre parcel, it's unnerving. I drove by one up in Washington State last year and down to wreck my car because I came around the corner. There they were, and I was like, I'm dead. Maybe a skeleton and powder and all. I mean, I thought it was over. But that footprint scares people to death when they see that. When the footprint is gone, the sound walls are down, and they revegetate and make it nice and pretty and green, you don't even notice it. It disappears from your mind. It's gone. Now, yes, there's some variety that there's still terrible things going on. But the technology, I think a lot of people tend to think of it as the industrial age, smokestacks, things going on. It's more like NASA. That's the technology these days.
Well, thank you. And then just cognizant of the fact that we only have 20 minutes left, I've definitely been hogging the questions. So at this point, do we have some folks online?
I have one question.
Okay, maybe start with an online question, then we turn to others who have questions from this point.
In an age where the public and politicians are increasingly retreating to their own camps and echo chambers are becoming increasingly polarized, we need to find overlap and points of intersection between different viewpoints and perspectives if we're going to find solutions to difficult problems. What do you do to seek out and understand different perspectives to find these points of intersection so we can move good policy forward?
It's a very good question. I think it's a false narrative. If you all came to the Capitol and watched us behind the scenes, those cameras do weird things to people. They talk different. They act different. When we're in front of the camera, you're going to hear one thing. When we go back to our offices and we go to lunch with each other and we have discussions, we are very good friends. Yes, there's some that we don't get along with, both sides. Kerry Donovan, who's coming over here in a couple of weeks, I believe he said, that's Steve Sundberg.
Yep.
Kerry Donovan's a very good friend of mine. We've run some very impactful legislation together. Between the lines, everybody, it's kind of like a football game. Everybody puts on their pads and they line up and we're going to get you. But as soon as you take the pads off, it's back to business as usual. We probably do more in the background to discuss these issues and defuse arguments than people will ever know. It's amazing. I mean, again, that narrative is driven by the media. They want you to figure there's a lot of divisiveness going on.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. Start right here. If you just mention who you are as you ask the question. Thank you.
Grant Couch, I live here in Boulder. I'm a lifelong fellow fiscal conservative. And I want to just follow up on what you just said. How sweet could it be if you and the leaders on the other side decided, you know what, we're going to be the example that the country needs to see in front of the cameras.
Great.
But aren't you the ones that can do that?
I totally agree with you. And we have those talks. Like, okay, let's not go out there and have we call it a shit show. Sorry about that. Media will probably get that. Ray Scott said shit show. He said it twice.
Max said it first.
I said shit
Did you say shit? I think if we all say it together, we just have some harmony. Oh, shit. But yes, you're right. Leroy Garcia, who's our president of the Senate right now, he and I are good friends. And we've actually sat down and talked about this. As you may know, he and I both got sued for Facebook strange things because we blocked something. Oh my God. So we both got sued. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. But we've sat down and talked about that, about how can we go into that building and show a more collegial atmosphere where the press has a very difficult time saying, oh, there's a problem. And I think we'll probably see it work on this next cycle. Maybe get a little bit better. A lot of here's a funny. Sometimes we'll do things to each other as a joke, and you'll never know it. And it was real serious last year because typically we leave about noon on Fridays, or sometimes we leave on Thursday nights. Well, about 5 or 6 of us on the Republican side had asked if we could leave. Personal things, going home, different, as you can imagine, I have to go to Grand Junction. Sometimes flights are a problem, ski traffic, which I always wonder if everybody loves it in Denver so much, why don't they stay here? That's my spin on that. So anyhow, the next Monday, I got home, I'm sitting in my chair with the fire going, playing with my laptop, and for some dumb reason I pulled up the Senate chamber just to make sure everybody got home. Oh no, they're duking it out. And they have something called the Call of the Senate, that's like, horns go off, the tanks come out, the doors get sealed, and every senator must be in the room, and if you're not here, the state patrol will retrieve you. And I looked at it and went, this is a problem. I'm just not going to be there, So I'm getting phone calls because, again, we have some people that don't get what's going on. So I get a phone call, Ray, you have to come back. And I said, it's only a 4-hour drive. You can sleep in your chair for all I give a damn. And I said, but furthermore, I'm not coming back. Send them to me. I don't care. I'll go to jail. I don't care. So this was late, it was actually a joke. They were trying to make it look serious, but it was really a joke. The whole thing was a joke. And when they're not going to do that. You tell the press that we screwed around in the building, but the joke was to mess with us 5 or 6 at once. One was in Kansas, one was in Las Vegas. I'm at home. One guy was on the road to Montreux. They were messing with us, if you will. So, okay, sorry. Hopefully that answered some of the questions.
Next question, right here.
You call this gentleman?
Yeah.
Or you call me?
This one here.
Sure. I'm David. I'm a graduate student here at the center. In your comment about people being employed by the oil and gas industry, as someone who researches the oil and gas industry, I might be an indirect employee of the industry just by studying it. But my question's not about that. It's more about energy policy in general.
Sure.
If say, or as we have specified, or goals specified to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as dictated, as kind of mandated or dictated or pushed forward by the governor, what areas of kind of consensus, overlap, kind of pragmatic steps forward that you and your colleagues in the Senate, maybe across the aisle or even amongst your caucus, in terms of energy policy towards greenhouse gas reductions, what areas do you see, whether it's in transportation or energy, the energy sector, the electrification sector, energy generation rather?
Right.
What areas do you see kind of some consensus being built or some kind of pragmatic steps forward that are both economical or politically palatable? Kind of what areas do you see kind of emerging?
Economicals, that's a key word.
Especially given
Right.
the prices of
Sure.
new wind and solar production.
Absolutely. We're duking it out right now with Xcel. They've gone to the PUC asking for a rate increase of 5.7% or something like that. I had them in my hearing and testimony saying, well, we can buy wind now for 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay. Well, in 2009, they put into effect something called a tiered rate. I don't know if you're familiar with that. June 1st to September 1st, your electric rate basically doubles. It's a tiered system. So if you use more than 500 kilowatts in a month, which is not much, your rate's going to click up and double. It's a punitive rate system. And it was designed to make you conserve. That was the idea, right? We're going to force you to conserve. Well, who's paying attention, right? Unless you're scrambling trying to pay your electric bill, then what the hell happened? A lot of people just don't pay attention. They're just like, well, geez, it's summer, air conditioning, it's just more. So we went back to them and said, okay, well, that's all well and good. So you're saying today your cost was, in 2009, I'm sorry, your cost was about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Now you say it's 4 because you got all this wind coming. Why haven't you lowered our rates? Crickets. They don't want to talk about it. Because what they want to do is take that money and reinvest it in more wind and solar. PUC will work right along with them because they're handpicked by the governor. So the PUC is not going to be anybody's friend. But we've had international energy conferences where that discussion's come up, and it's like, well, why wouldn't a state that is saving all that money, or a utility, pass that on to the consumer? Because everybody knows that's an economic driver, right? If I've got an extra $100 or $200 a month in my pocket, or you do, you go, people spend. That's what they do. But then they turn around and come back just recently and ask for a 5.7% increase. It's like, what the heck is going on? And that's where the California problem has come in, and some of the other states you can read about that have just gone through the roof. Here's the one that I think you need to keep your eye on. I'll probably butcher this. I think it's called a regional transmission.
RTO.
What's the O stand?
Organization.
Very good. There. California was here testifying. And I thought that was weird, number one. But number two, they're asking for us to join this organization. So I'm thinking, what the hell are they up to? Because they want us to transmit our power, excess power, to them. And maybe Nevada was there too, as I recall. So after this meeting's over with, I actually grabbed the young lady from California. I didn't grab her. You can't say anything anymore, right? I mean, you just, what are you going to do? I escorted her to the side and they had a chat. And I said, well, I'm missing something. Tell me the rest of this equation. And she smiled. She was very good. She goes, okay, we're dealing with the environmentalists in California. They don't want us putting up more solar. They don't want us putting up more wind. I said, okay. So your state now is all in. But you go ahead and cover your landscape with it. We don't care. And we'll buy from it. But that way we don't have to screw up our landscape that you do. I thought that was a very powerful discussion. I was like, wow, I had no idea that was coming. That's scary. That's really, I just came back from Anchorage, Alaska for an energy conference up there. Renewables was part of the discussion. You know, in Alaska, I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's the craziest place I've ever been. You're sitting in Anchorage, Alaska, and as soon as you go 10 minutes out of the city limits, there's nothing. I mean, it's, ta-da, you're in the wilderness. So during that discussion, it did come up about how much more can Alaska do. And so we can't do anything. It's federal land all the way around. And I was like, oh, because you can't cover federal land with windmills. Denali National Park wouldn't be too interested, would they? So that was a problem, right? So we're going to have those kind of issues. My part of the state, we got nothing. We're 78% federal land. We got, we have a little solar farm here. I don't think we have any wind generation at all. We buy everything comes from Excel over here. But those are dynamics that I think people lose in the equation. Is where are we going to put it? How many thousands and thousands of acres are we willing to dedicate to renewables?
Okay, take another question from the young man in the yellow this time. And then after you, then we'll take from you in the time.
Yeah, my name is Jim Ross, and I'm a conservative from Longmont.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm here is not because of an article I read in the Denver Post, it's an article I read in the Times Call. In the Times Call, and I'm going to have to look down because I want to read a couple of the quotes that I saw in that article, which caused me to think I needed to be here. You won't be flattered by this. It says here, and this is a quote by Max, that he accepted, that you, Senator Scott, that he accepted our invitation and is willing to have this conversation. I found impressive. I'm not sure why you found that impressive, but let me continue and then you can comment. Down here a little later on, we have another comment that says, again, Max, I tried to get another Republican, but I didn't get a response, Wyckoff said. I didn't mean to alarm my colleagues, but this is the reality we're in. I'm not sure what you mean by the reality we're in there, Max. And then down, and I'm going to be careful because this guy's about safety size. And no needs of safety, just in case. No needs of safety. But he says, he's talking about perpetuating this and so on and so forth, and he's denying that there could be a possible two-sided debate there. I don't think that's a welcoming comment to a speaker who you might have expected different comments from. You didn't really get a lot of it, but you might have expected.
So this is a question for me.
That's exactly what you do. Huh?
How do you like that?
I like this. This is getting better.
That was a question for me.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well,
I'll
it
keep
was
my-
what you want it to be, Max. I'm not trying to debate anybody.
I'll keep my answer short because we're here to listen principally to Senator Ray Scott.
Mm-hmm.
So let me think back. I stand by all those comments you said. I found it impressive that he's willing to come here and have this conversation with us
Because it usually doesn't happen.
because it usually doesn't happen.
Why not?
Well, we issued invitations. I'm looking at my colleague Ben from the Benson Center to other Republicans who chose not to take us up on the invitation. And that's unfortunate. And I appreciate you as a conservative coming and quoting me back in the Longmont newspaper to reinforce the fact that this is a valuable and a unique opportunity that we have to hear from him. And so we had this conversation before, as we were talking before this session, that it would be great if you ended up having a great experience, that he could then invite some of his fellow Republicans to come and have further conversations.
Yes.
So that's where we are on that.
And then also add this, this Benson building, where one of these gentlemen over here is associated with that. That's gotta be Bruce Knudsen, your outgoing president, who claimed upon his leaving office that the most significant accomplishment in his tenure was the fact that he began to hear a little more of the conservative voice on a campus that he didn't say it was 15-1, but it's about 15-1, 12 or 15-1. So you make it Bruce. Don't make Bruce unhappy.
He may come back.
I'm not going to elaborate further on what you quoted back to me, other than to say that if you felt as though my comments were unwelcoming, you
I thought
misread that. That's where I'll leave it, because here I am welcoming Colorado State Senator Ray Scott for a conversation. So that might be an unfortunate misreading. Turn to you.
Hi, Mike McFerrin. I'm a scientist in the room.
Oh no. Oh,
So I'm going to go a little bit into the science, not get deep into it because we've got 4 minutes. I don't want you to be able to. The state of Colorado, roughly its annual average temperature. This is from the Climate Change in Colorado report put on by scientists within the state of Colorado, paid for by the state. Warmed about 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the last several decades. That's roughly half. When we're talking about average annual temperature, the difference between the state of Colorado and the state of Nevada is about 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the average annual temperature. So it's roughly half the way from turning the climate of Colorado into the climate of Nevada. That's the kind of scale. Just a few weeks ago, water managers in the Colorado River District, which includes your Mesa County area, were discussing in their annual seminar, their State of the Basin seminar, large-scale adaptation efforts that will be needed to decrease flows in the Colorado River Basin, due in large part because of higher temperatures simply evaporate more water, and we have lower levels in reservoirs and in Colorado River flows. And that combined with increased population on demand on the Colorado River, not all of which is in Colorado, as you're aware, but are going to lead to water crises throughout the state, throughout the region, the Southwest region. And this also affects things like wildfires. The amount of wildfire acreage increase from drying of the landscape due to these changes has increased. It's been well documented. It's not a narrative. Those are the facts that the scientists within your district agree upon. So my question to you is, as a state senator, what specific legislation would you like to work on with your colleagues that helps address the coming squeezes and pressures on water distribution and water resources that affects industries in every aspect of the state? But then that also help mitigate the future future changes that are coming, before Colorado turns entirely into the climate of the state of Nevada, what types of efforts are needed to that you feel that you could work on with your colleagues to help address those scale problems?
So as you answer this question, I'll just say that in the interest of time, we're going to have make this the last question. It's sort of those folks on mind. But please go ahead, and then if you have closing comments from there, the floor is yours.
We like to say we have 80% of the water and you have 80% of the people. Because you are 100%, no, not 100%, but you're down dependent on us to give you water. You just are. You know about the rocket time.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously we see a lot of concern from East Slope folks about our water. We get that. And I'm glad because it helps us in some cases. Although we do like to have you focus on the Platte more, because then you leave us alone. It works out much better. Now I will say something probably controversial. I really am concerned about the science. Okay? I spent hours reading, watching YouTube videos, a couple of cartoons in there, lots of information. And I realized we have thousands of scientists, and I don't even know what the hell the number is. I quit counting at like 200 different agencies studying climate change around the country. And the common denominator was money. Now, let's go back to 2007 when the Supreme Court said, EPA, if you can, what do they call that? I'm going to rattle through some of this on my end. Endangerment finding, the Massachusetts case. It kind of set off this whole climate change thing, right? Because when the court said EPA, if you can find the findings, and they used 100% of the models that were developed at that point, which is like, what, 32, I think it is. If they stay with those models, the funding stays in place. If anybody fixes one of those, it's got to be 100% of the models, not 99%. It's got to be 100% of the models have to agree. If one of those models all of a sudden says, we like the Russian model better, and they flatline it, or they go back further and grab more data, all hell's going to break loose, right? Because the funding starts to shift. Nothing against scientists or any educators, but that affects you. It's a rhetoric missile I can fire, because that's going to hit right next to your feet. Because funding is coming from the government to study this, right?
That's not an accurate representation of where the actual findings come from, the data, thermometers.
Totally understand. Then I'm going to touch on that a little bit, and we can discuss all this stuff. Because I think one thing I thought about when Max put this together is we don't have enough time, to dive into what I believe and what he believes and what you believe, and it's a lot of stuff, right? I mean, it's a big deal.
Maybe a report from the state of Colorado.
No, I get it.
From the source.
I get it. But there's all kinds of other reports, right? A scientist can pick a report from, there's a lot of picking that can go on. And that's one of the arguments. There's a lot of cherry picking going on to meet an argument.
I'd argue that YouTube videos probably aren't the best source for
They're entertaining though. I went back to 60s. I looked at all kinds of stuff. I was actually falling asleep watching some of this stuff. But it was fascinating to watch. I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to come up with some type of a discussion. I guess we'd have to call it a study, right? Where we can all agree on the data, the science.
That's what
Not
the
the
IPCC reports do.
And, but see, again, that's the problem. Is you can't get my side of the aisle to go, oh, that's perfect.
But the data itself isn't partisan.
But what I think we need to do is have a bipartisan panel, both sides, right? Have them study and say, and have the experts come in and have some discussions about this and try to come up with a settled answer that says, okay, we can agree on these 5 things and these 2 we're not going to agree. Does that make sense?
Of the scientific conclusions?
Yeah, absolutely.
The
Because
scientific conclusions are made by the legislature. This
I totally get
report
that.
was put together when there was a
totally
split House or split legislative branch.
For as many of you sitting there saying that I can get 5 other guys to disagree, that's the problem, right? I can get 5 scientists to come and say, well, he's wrong. And then you can say, no, he's wrong. We can't get everybody on the same page. So that's what I noticed after looking over all the stuff I read last night and all the things. And I didn't just read my side. I was looking at both sides and going, this is freaking confusing.
The data isn't a both sides issue.
Where's your starting point? That was one of the big arguments. Every scientist can pick a different starting point. He could say, well, we're going to start in the 30s because that was the warmest area. Other ones were moved in 1975. They just
It
moved all
started
over
in
the
the
place.
30s. There's been considerable warming since then.
Do you know about the Russian model? Do you study the Russian model?
So,
I heard a lot of interesting discussion last night on both sides, Democrats, Republicans, scientists with, credentials this deep, saying the Russian model is something we need to start looking at. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? I mean, I had to dig around trying to find this stupid Russian model. And I don't understand that stuff. I don't get it.
You did a summary report.
I've got this.
so
Okay.
I'm sorry that we're over time right
Yeah.
now.
Well,
But I
here-
want to say that,
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm interrupting you. What I want to say is I really do hope this is the start of an ongoing conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you two can exchange information and follow up with one another. Others here in this room, we have catering thanks to the Benson Center, so please, this is an informal chance for people to continue to interact before you have to go. But we are over time. A few people have had to leave already, and if you have any final word before I thank you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, and thank all of you for your comments and your suggestions and questions. This is a dialogue that has to continue, to your point. We have to sit down, we have to talk more about this. Are we gonna agree? We won't agree on who's gonna win the football game next weekend, but at least we can get that dialogue moving, right? We
I
have to.
would hope we could agree the sky.
Exactly, and trust me, I'm one of those guys that I can put on a Facebook post, sky is blue, it's a beautiful day. First comment, you're an asshole. All I said was the sky was blue. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just, that's the nature of certain individuals out there. And there is a culture, I think we can all agree, that really want to keep the hysteria level way up here, because they know they're winning the debate, right? So the higher they can keep that hysteria level, the less discussion we're going to have. I was going to hit on a few things that, with all my amazing research last night, till midnight, that just poked out. And I'd like, and you can email me, we can talk on the phone, anybody else who's in the science just area, I'd love to keep talking to you, because I need to understand as much as I possibly can. So that the Denver Post next year can say, he actually said something smart for you. Some of the things that stood out to me, cherry picking data.
Sure.
Oh, that's something that they discussed. 1 degree temperature change that can be proven in the first part of the 20th century and the second part, I believe, something like that. That one had me a little, if it just went up 1 degree, then ocean levels was another discussion about, is it really going up much? Is it not going up much? The 31 models or 32 models that the countries came up with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the United Nations then used to set up the Climate Accord, et cetera, and also the Supreme Court ruled on in 2007 using those models, period. No, end of discussion. There's no other models that can be used except
Those are the climate model groups
Correct.
of the world. I'm not sure what other models you would use.
Well, there were 31 countries or 32 countries put in these models, and that's it. End of discussion. and the idea that if, in fact, somebody, a scientist, would came out and, or I guess it has to be a group of scientists, I'm learning a little bit about it. It has to be a consensus amongst a group of scientists, but let's just say that the climate models are wrong. That, let's just use for conversation that the Russian model is the right model.
And all the others.
And all the others wrong. And that brought in, had 32 scientists or 32 countries that said, okay, no, you're right, Russian model's right. That stops everything. The EPA can no longer regulate carbon. And it's
Well,
over.
EPA would have to go through another engagement.
Correct.
They would have to.
They would have to go through that.
They would have to redo it.
Yeah, this is one. Not trying to offend anybody. Who's driving the narrative, the science or the scientists? Interesting question.
Scientists are the one who do
I know,
science
but
as a
you
profession.
you can have an opinion, right?
It's like saying who's doing the narrative in the classroom. Is
I
it
know.
the teaching or the teachers? It's
That's what there's some discussion about that. Is it just, because we've got thousands of scientists, and again, I'm not trying to incite anything here, that are making a hell of a lot of money off of doing this job. Actually, I didn't say
I still have more in student loans. I make less than you do.
But you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people out there making a lot of money. So if somebody upsets the apple cart, what happens to their income? Okay, that's just one thing to talk about. Okay, here was one that was fascinating. When we have this climate change discussion, And based on what the governor wants to do, not what we want to do, and I will tell you this, a lot of Democrats in that building don't want to do it either. What are you willing to give up to go to his model of 100% renewables by 2040, 2050? What are you willing to give up? Because you got to give something up. And some of the things that people never talk about are right in this building. It's not your shoes and this basketball and the things that people throw at you all the time. You've got to change every heating system in every home in the entire state of Colorado. They burn natural gas. That's not a renewable, right? In that world, they have emissions poking out the roof of this damn place. Do you know what they are? I don't know what they are. We could find out, I suppose, if we did some scientific tests. So we wanted to give up. Everything has to go onto the electric grid. How is that going to work? I did read one report that just threw out a number of an average of $40,000 per home to convert away from a fossil fuel to the electric grid, from electric furnace, electric water heater, electric fireplace, or whatever. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Multiply that times the household in Colorado, I don't know what the hell that looks like, but it's billions, obviously. That conversation's not happening. The hotels that you drive to downtown that have the massive gas fireplaces, now I know some about those because I used to be involved in that. Those things are burning on 500, 600, maybe some are 1 million BTUs per hour. And you probably know this, a blue flame is an efficient flame, right? A yellow crappy flame that flops around and looks pretty is the most disgusting, nastiest crap in the world. And it's going right at the top of the restaurant downtown Denver. Anybody talking about that? No. Are we going to replace all those? I mean, it's a big topic, right?
We agree completely on that. It's a huge topic.
It is. I mean, it's a long conversation people need to have. And I think until and unless we have those conversations, we are going to do some battles with this stuff.
I see the nervous in Max's face is wanting to wrap this up.
Max is hungry. Max is hungry. I can tell by the look at him. Just a soccer player, right?
Yeah, that's right. Next time we'll schedule you for 9 minutes.
Okay.
There you go.
I really want to thank everyone for coming along. I feel as though this was productive. It's a productive start to a lot more ongoing work that needs to be done. So thank you all for coming. I hope